joined by Chris Mannix. What are you doing, Chris?
You guys have some interesting conversations on these breaks.
You have.
It's a totally different television show.
I didn't know I was on the show with the world's greatest athletes.
Right here.
We need to do a second show, which is just commercial break content, which is going to be at a much later hour or as a podcast.
That could be on FS2 one day. I like that idea.
Or FS4. That's where it belongs.
The Ocho.
Anyway. You enjoying this time of year, Chris Mannix?
I love it. I can't get enough of it.
Last night was great.
It's not too hot outside for you?
No. Nice and
Great.
Once upon a time, there was an NBA team that played really well and had really talented stars, but had a reputation for choking in the playoffs. That was the Rockets, but that was a long time ago. Not this year, they said. They're too good. Well, they are good, but they still lost Game 2 last night to the Utah Jazz. Jazz won 116-108 to even up that series. Jazz rookie Donovan Mitchell put up 17 points, but had the highlight of the night right there. Right there. An insane putback, one-handed slam to send the Jazz bench into a frenzy. Dunks aside, we got ourselves a series, Chris Mannix. How big of a deal is it that the Jazz stole home court in this game?
I think it's a pretty big deal, and I love the Jazz. I mean, they're just relentless. From day one of this season on, from playing without Gordon Hayward to right now with Ricky Rubio and a young budding superstar in Donovan Mitchell. What I loved about this game is that it felt like the Jazz, after Game 1, took a page out of Boston's playbook. What the Celtics did in Game 1 of the Sixers was to say, we're going to let Joel Embiid get his. We're going to say, we're going to go one-on-one with everybody, and those great shooters in Philadelphia are not going to beat us from the outside. That's what the Jazz did in this game, too. They said, look, Clint Capella can roll to the rim. We're going to give up those dunks. We're not going to give the Andersons, the Gordons, all these guys with the Rockets wide-open three-point looks. And that was the difference, right? Game 1, Rockets made a bunch of threes. Jazz missed a bunch. Flip the script in Game 2. The Jazz made threes, and the Rockets missed a bunch. The question is that strategy going to be successful going into Game 3? Will the Rockets be that weak from beyond the three-point line? Because if they are, the Jazz, I think they have a great chance to win the series.
Hey, Chris, are you concerned with the Rockets' defense moving forward? Because for me, they've been outscored 6 of the 8 quarters. The way Utah has attacked them, to me, there's always concern about how good will the Rockets be defensively in crunch. Now, we've already had them in the finals playing against Golden State, but, man, they're having problems with Utah. Would that be a concern with you moving forward?
I'm less concerned about the defense than I am about the offense. And look, the Rockets will always have question marks about their defense, but some of the shots, I don't think Joe Ingles goes 7 for 9 in this next game. I don't think they shoot as high a percentage in this next game. I just wonder what adjustments Mike D'Antoni makes on the other end of the floor to open up his shooters, because this is what the Jazz are going to do, right? They're going to bank on Rudy Gobert being able to be a one-man band in the paint, defending one-on-one against these guys, and say, you're not going to beat us from the outside. The other thing I love about this defense is that they got physical. Like, they got real mean in this game. Those guards, big, long, aggressive guards. Dante Exum and Royce O'Neal is one of the more underrated role players in the NBA. They went after the Rockets full court, got in their face. Quinn Snyder is one of the best coaches in basketball. The adjustments he made in Game 2 were absolutely brilliant.
I agree with you on Quinn Snyder. From the commentary...
You said 5 things. I agree with you on 1 thing.
No. It was the last thing he said. I think you made a bunch of really good points, and nobody knows about Royce O'Neal. I'm glad you brought him up. Like that, he's been good for them. He was good for them against the Thunder in round 1. He's been good for them in this series.
Played about 70 games during the regular season, consistent throughout.
So here... Listen, from the commentary after the game last night on television to my own Twitter feed to what we've talked about on this show for an hour, what this is confirming to me is folks, despite the 65 wins, despite Harden's MVP campaign, it doesn't seem like folks really believed in the Rockets the way at least I still do. I am not going to, what I consider, overreact to losing a game to a good Jazz team on a night they went ice cold from 3. I watched them in round 1 play what I consider they're much more talented than your typical 8 seed because Minnesota had Jimmy Butler coming back. And I watched them win that series comfortably in 5 games. I watched them in Game 1 of this series dominate Utah in the first 20 minutes of the game to essentially end it right then and there. When you're up 20-plus in the second quarter and you have the firepower the Rockets have, the Jazz were never able to get it within 13
In game number 1,
points.
the Jazz were at a tremendous disadvantage. Lack of preparation time. They were tired from the series before. So I expected game number 1 to be lopsided.
But we have seen.
But that was true.
Absolutely. And we have seen teams, be it Boston or Cleveland, that had the lack of preparation going up against a more rested opponent, come out and play really well.
Use that momentum.
Use that momentum. So I really believe the Rockets are a great basketball team. I do not think you can win 65 games in the regular season and not be a great basketball team. And I do not think, if I had seen Harden and Chris Paul as a duo struggle in the postseason, then I would care a lot more about their individual personal struggles in the postseason. Yeah, it stinks for the Rockets that you win 65 games and now you don't have home court for the rest of this round, or at least until you steal one in Utah. But I don't think this game is an indicator of what the rest of the series is going to look like.
I agree with you. I think it's too early to start evoking the fact that Chris Paul's never been to a conference finals. It's too early to start looking back at what James Harden didn't do in the conference semis last year against San Antonio. But I push back on one thing you said there. You said the Rockets went ice cold from 3, and they did. It wasn't like they were ice cold uncontested. They were contested threes. What they're going to have to adjust to doing is saying they're going to give up mid-range jump shots, right? So will we take those? Can we make those consistently? They're going to keep giving up these rolls to the rim. Are we going to be okay with Clint Capella being our leading scorer in this game? What the Jazz want to do is make the Rockets beat them uncomfortably. Make them beat them in a way that they haven't done all season long. Maybe Houston can adjust to that, but I don't think during this series they're going to get a lot of open looks from 3. They're going to have a tough time getting those shots against the Jazz.
Even if Ingles doesn't give you 27 or whatever he gave you last night, if they play the same defense in the same game against Houston, do the Jazz have a shot? I mean, I know we're all talking about the fact that Houston will eventually come to their senses, at least you are, and walk away with this. But I don't know. Utah looked pretty good last night.
They have a shot. I'd still look. Just losing home court advantage is not enough for me to think that the Rockets are going to take this series. But going home, the Jazz are going to play better. Going home, the Jazz are going to be more energized. And Donovan Mitchell, man, I mean, this guy is just so much fun to watch. Like the adjustment he made last night, he wasn't great offensively for the first 3 quarters.
Playing the point was difficult.
But what he was a playmaker. He said, you know what? You want me to be a passer?
7 assists in the first half.
Yeah, Ricky Rubio's out. I'll be a playmaker. This guy can do it all there on the floor. And there's a reason that every player in the league, and I asked Chris Paul this before the playoffs started, like, who is your favorite player to watch on the young players? He said Donovan Mitchell. That permeates throughout the league.
And the maturity. His teammates talk about, yeah, he's a rookie in the program, but as far as everything he does on a day-to-day basis, he's a veteran. Last night's game, we need you to play the point. He's a scorer. He is a volume shooter, scorer, penetrator, can finish at the rim. No, I'll take over the point. Has his best game as far as assists that he's had since he's been playing basketball.
His best game, assist game, that shouldn't be overlooked since high school. He never had 11 assists at Louisville.
This is what he does. Not to interrupt, but this is what he does. Like in college, he wasn't even a scorer. He didn't have a 30-point game in college. He had a 40-plus point game 2 months into his season. He adapts. He has adapted the NBA as fast as any player I've seen in a while.
It's rare a guy goes 6 for 21 from the field, and you're talking about how well he played.
Yeah.
But Donovan Mitchell,
plus 13.
Right? He was excellent last night. And you mentioned the Chris Paul thing. They had an interesting nugget during the game that I hadn't heard, which is that Chris Paul is one of the reasons he turned pro. That Chris Paul was working out with him after his sophomore year at Louisville, so just a year ago, and he told him, I think you're ready, man. I think you can go into the draft. Chris Paul was obviously 100% correct on that.
All right, Chris, we'll see you a little bit later on the show. Coming up, can anyone fix the Thunder? The Thunder's broken. We'll break it down next on First Things First. Who knew?